Hey, so wanted to make a connection here between this picture and what happens in the inflation rate. Because I keep talking about this M2 money supply contraction that we're seeing now for the first time since 48-49 or 37-38 or the Great Depression. And it's quite interesting because as we can see there was a 1948-49 M2 money supply contraction, so that means we should see deflation, right? Yes, deflation. US inflation rate, we had deflation because of this. All right, what about in 37, 38? We should have deflation as well because there is a money supply contraction in 37, 38. Is there a deflationary period here in 38, 39? Yeah. Why? Because the money supply contracted. All right, what about the Great Depression? There should be deflation there. Yeah. And then some people are going to say, but there's deflation here, there's brief deflation here, there's deflation here, and there's deflation here without the money supply contraction. Right, you can still get deflation even without the M2 money supply contraction. The M2 money supply did not contract before the global financial crisis. But deflation can occur because of demand destruction, because, well, when demand destruction gets so extreme and everyone is so scared to spend because of job losses, bankruptcies, delinquencies, etc., which I'm going to get into in this video, that you can get deflation naturally. And then because of capitalism, if the M2 money supply wasn't expanding, we would see deflation naturally. That's called what I call healthy deflation. It's actually called productive disinflation, which leads to healthy deflation, right? That's also why this occurred here in 1927 to 28. This is productive disinflation that leads to healthy deflation, okay? And same thing right here in 24. Now, some people would say, well, there were recessions back then. So they're pointing towards 27, 28, right? Technically, they're correct. There was a recession here, because the gray zone here indicates a recession around 1927, 28. And same thing here in 1923, 24. And this goes back as far as 1924. So there's deflation here because of a recession. So that's more similar to what happened during the GFC, right? So you can still have deflation whether it's because of productive disinflation or because of recessions normally. But what makes it 100% that you get it is a contracting money supply. Okay? So there is absolutely no way out of it. Whenever you get a M2 money supply contraction like this, you're gonna see deflation. It is 100% sure. You can sit there and say, oh, something has changed in the past 200 years. Nothing has changed. If the M2 money supply goes up, you're most likely going to see inflation. If the M2 money supply goes down in a credit-based monetary system, or in a debt-based monetary system rather, right? Then you are 100% going to see deflation. So when people talk about, oh, well, it's the same now as in the 1940s and 1970s, and we're going to see another spike in inflation. It's not true. Look at this. In the 40s, the black line was going up, right? And so I've made it in yellow here. And that led to this red line going up here, which is the inflation rate. Inflation rate in red and M2 growth rate year over year in black. What about the second time the M2 money supply went up in black? Well, you got inflation with a lag. What about right here? You got inflation with a lag. You got inflation with a lag because they expanded money supply. Just like when we expanded money supply here, it led to inflation right here. But how are you going to get inflation right now with a contracting money supply? That's not a thing. Cannot have a new rise in the inflation rate without the M2 money supply exploding. Okay, it's not possible. You can sit there and say that it's going to happen. It's not going to happen until the M2 money supply explodes again, which it hasn't. So people are going to sit there and say, oh, they're just going to cut rates and we're going to get another spike of inflation. No, because it's nothing like the 1970s or 1940s. The M2 growth rate year over year is not going up right now. You are not going to see a re-acceleration in inflation. You're heading towards deflation. Okay? There's a bunch of things I want to bring up here. Um, so I was having a nice conversation with a guy on Twitter, and I wrote this, and he goes, "The ones that fell for the inflated debt away are my favorite." And I'm like, yeah, the math is not mathing. Since 2016, the national debt is up from 20.9 trillion, 20.9 trillion, 2016, to 35.2 trillion today, which equates to a roughly 68% increase in the national debt since 2016. I went to a chart and just did from 20.93 to 35.27, right? In trillions in this case. That's a 68% increase in the national debt since 2016. Meanwhile, the inflation rate is up 33%. You're going to say, oh, well, I don't trust these numbers. Right. They're probably a bit higher, but it's not way higher than this, okay, since 2016. All right? How do we know that? Well, because not even the M2 money supply has gone up more than the national debt. Okay? Since they expanded the national debt that much by 68%, the M2 money supply is up 60%. And you don't have a one-to-one. If you increase the M2 money supply by 1%, it doesn't mean you're going to get 1% inflation. No, because you have productivity, etc., which makes it so that it's not a one-to-one relationship between the M2 growth rate and inflation. Okay? Now what I want to do is I want to go to a chart and I want to actually I want to go to my Twitter first because there's a couple more things that I want to go over here. Some pictures. There's some similarities here that are absolutely epic. This is the 2-year yield in regular candles, and this other line here is the S&P 500. You can see when the 2-year yield goes down, the S&P crashes. When the 2-year yield goes down, the S&P crashes. When the 2-year yield goes down, the S&P crashes. When a 2-year yield goes down, what do you think is going to happen? But you see how the stock market initially liked it when the yields were falling. The stock market went up. The stock market here has initially liked it when the yields were falling. Yeah, until they fall over completely. Then the stock market rolls over, just like it's going to roll over. Here's what the DXY did in late 07, early 08. And then it did that. And I think it's going to do something like this. Do I know that for a fact? No, but it's doing something very similar to back then. In regular candles, we have the Nikkei. The Nikkei topped out on pretty much the exact same date in 07. And then it made a lower high. Whereas the S&P in orange made a higher high. Well, we topped out in early July. They both went down. The S&P V-shape recovered. And it's now creating negative divergences. Is it going to top out in October? While the Nikkei makes a lower high? I don't know, but it looks the same. What about this? Yield curve up, irregular candles. Anything below the green horizontal line is the inversion. The orange line goes up, that's the unemployment rate. Yield curve up, unemployment rate up. 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 Wow, it's almost as if it's not different this time. Oh, Jesus. Like I wrote here. This is why people go like, oh, well, you have been talking about that there was going to be a recession for a very long time. In fact, since like 2022. Right, because I was looking at a leading economic indicator that tells you that the recession is coming in 6 to 24 months from the inversion of the yield curve. Did the yield curve predict the global financial crisis? Yeah, it inverted in January 2006, but the recession didn't begin until December of 2007, nearly 2 years later. But they didn't tell you that until 3 years later because they revised all the data going back, right? So from January '06 till December '08, they were gaslighting you for 2.5 years saying, oh, no recession, guys. Don't worry, trust our government numbers. Well, if there's one thing we've learned, is that you can't do that because they faked 820,000 jobs, which they admitted to. That's a 30% miss. You can't, that's not just a small error, okay? What about this? So the GFC played out like this. January 2006, the yield curve inverts. It predicts a rise in unemployment rate, which leads to a GDP contraction in 6 to 24 months. In May 2007, the unemployment rate bottoms. September 18th, 2007, first rate cut. September 18th, 2007. Markets soar after Fed cuts key rate by half a point. Well, we're getting our first interest rate cut on September 18th, 2024. It's going to say the same thing in the headlines. Markets soar after the Fed cuts key rate by a half point. Going back to this. On October 11th, 2007, the S&P 500 tops. In December 2007, the recession begins. We didn't know that at the time. It was officially announced in December 2008 by the NBR, and they did lots of revisions. GDP revisions, jobs numbers, everything. Retail sales, all of it. They lied about all of the data while their rich buddies got out. In March 2009, the S&P bottomed. In October 2009, unemployment rate peaks. So far, in July 2022, the 10-year 2-year yield curve inverted. In October 2022, the 10-year 3-month yield curve inverted. And it predicts recession or a rise in unemployment rate, which leads to a GDP contraction in 6 to 24 months because as people lose their jobs, there's less consumers, which means that corporate earnings get affected, etc., etc. More layoffs, people get scared, they stop spending. There you go, there you get your GDP contraction, okay, because of a rise in unemployment rate. Now, the unemployment rate bottomed a year and a half ago in April of last year. On September 18th, they are going to cut, just like they cut on September 18th, 2007. When does the S&P top? I don't know. In October last time. When does it bottom? I don't know. It was in Q1 in March 2009. In this case, if we follow the exact same thing, we top in October of this year and we bottom in March of 2026. And then in that case, the unemployment rate peaks in October of 2026. I think U3 goes to 8 to 12% and U6 goes to 15 to 20%. U3 unemployment rate is national, U6 is underemployment. When did the recession begin? I don't know. It began in the GFC cycle after a 0.6% rise in unemployment rate from 4.4 to 5%. So a 0.9% rise so far must definitely count as one as well. It took 38 months for the whole process to play out from yield conversion to SPX bottom, January '06 till March 2009. It took 45 months for the whole process to play out from yield conversion to unemployment rate peaking, January '06 till October 2009. It's because of this that people doubt it, but it's always correct. It's the same. It's the same, man. Everything is good when they hike rates. Everything is good when they hike rates. Everything is fine during the pause. Everything is fine during the pause. When they cut, and towards the end of the pause, things start to deteriorate. Well, things have started to deteriorate. And if you want to say no, it hasn't, okay, delinquencies are on the rise. Savings are at a record low. Credit card debt is exploding in red. Unemployment is rising. The blue line is the GFC path. The red line is the present from the 10-year 3-month inversion. At the same time, we have foreclosures on the rise. When did we last see that? 2008. All right. When was the last time they said, oh, the economy is not bad because the unemployment rate is low? 2008. All right. When was the last time they did revisions like this? Oh, 2009. When was the last time they were worried about the labor market? Oh, 2008, 2007 to 2009, just like now. The Fed is worried about the labor market. More and more Americans are worried about that they're going to lose their job. American workers haven't been as worried about losing their job since 2014. Warning signs flash in a labor survey as Fed officials something something. More and more Americans are worried they will lose their job. Guys, wake up, man. Wake up. It's bad. It's really bad. Oh, it's gonna be a soft landing. Yeah, look at the soft landings in the past. Soft landing, boom, recession. Soft landing, boom, recession. So soft landing. Well, maybe not here, because it was the artificial recession here, created by the government. But it would have came regardless. Soft landing. There's gonna be a fat fucking recession bar here as well. You're just getting gaslighted. Soft landing expected 1973. Boom, recession. 78. Boom, recession. Not in 78, but it came just after that, right? Again, they say soft landing, and a year to 2 years later, you get the recession. Soft landing expected 1980, boom, recession. 1989, recession. 2000, recession. 2007, recession. Like, come on, man, wake up. Bernanke sees no recession. February 27, 2008, he's gaslighting you. Bernanke says US could be facing a mild recession. April 2008. Like, what do you think is gonna happen? I honestly think if you get caught on the wrong side of this, you are so stupid if that's the case. Look at this. How many Americans live in paycheck to paycheck? 66%. 48% making 100K or more. 32% making 150K or more. But everything is fine, right? With rising delinquencies, record low savings, rising unemployment rate. Like, you are so dumb if you think this is good. Why are they lying about this many jobs? Why are they revising retail sales as well as the jobs reports? Here is a chart from Nick Gurley at Reventure Consulting. I want to give him credit for this chart because I did not make this chart. You can see historically, right? There are a couple of times here where the Fed cuts rates and there is no recession. 98, no recession. Right. Was the yield curve inverted? No. So no recession. 95, was the yield curve inverted? No. So no recession. 84, was the yield curve inverted? No. So no recession. 1966, was it inverted? Yes. Was there a recession? No. Technically, that was the only time I was wrong. But the S&P went down 25%. Inflation adjusted, you didn't see your money from uh, Dow Jones. From 1966 till 2009. So yeah, it was different, I guess. The unemployment rate didn't rise. The stock market still went down, and you didn't see your money for 43 years, inflation adjusted. So enjoy. All right, so those are the times where there was no recession when they started cutting rates. Okay, anyways, no recession is 4 out of 15 times. Yeah, 3 out of these times that led to this 4 number here, there was no inverted yield curve. So the yield curve indirectly said that there was going to be a soft landing, right? And the one time in 1966 there was a credit crunch uh, and a 25% stock market decline. Okay, so let's see. The average savings rate going into a recession is around 9%. We're at 3.4% right here. Okay, and again, I want to give credit to venture consulting Nick Gurley because he came up with the chart, right? So he made a video about this, and I'm gonna quote him with a lot of the things here. So I don't want to take credit for this, okay? The credit goes to him. All right. Debt to GDP going into this is at 120%. The average is 50%. The stock market cap to GDP is 200%. The average going to recession is 70%. It has to get cut in by like two thirds just to get back to reasonable levels, even in the beginning of a recession. And look at housing, 176%. The average is around 118% going into it. The unemployment rate, when they start cutting rates, is up 4% year over year from the cycle low. It's up 21% right now. I mean, like, if you think this is going to end well, this is so bad. It's terrible. It's so bad. You have to be absolutely blind to not see how bad this is. All right, good luck. Enjoy.